Good day, LML for 807 students. The purpose of today's online lecture is to enable you to summarize a case properly. Besides it being an essential ability for practicing law in general, to be able to summarize case law is important for your studies as it will help you to study effectively and to answer your assignment and exam questions correctly. Before I move to the next slide, I briefly want to mention the following regarding discussing case law in assignments and examinations. Due to the amount of prescribed case law in the module, making case summaries of each case will assist you to study and memorize case law more effectively. Also, by having studied your case summaries, you'll be prepared to answer questions in assignments or exams that require case discussion. Case law can be asked in various ways. For example, you could be asked to discuss a case just as it is. You'll need to know how to structure the case summary correctly, which the slides will assist you with today. You could also be asked to refer to case law as part of an answer. Here you are to consider the mark allocation as a guide to how much of the case discussion is required. General tips before you start to summarize a case is to read over the coursework relevant to the case before you start the summary. This will assist you to place the case within the context of the coursework. A case may often deal with more than one issue, and by reading your coursework, you will know which issue dealt with in the case is relevant to your studies. Also, read through the entire case before you start the summary. This will give you a general overview of the case and help you identify the relevant issues that you need to summarize. Please keep in mind that when summarizing a case, to read the head note alone is inadequate. The head note contains insufficient detail for you to fully understand the issues discussed and how the court reached its decision. Also, when reading the case, keep in mind that the summary generally has to be concise. You'll therefore need to identify the most important and relevant issues that need to be discussed. How you structure your case summary is very important. A case generally deals with the facts, the legal issue, and the reasoning of the court, which leads to the decision. Therefore, the most logical framework in which to summarize a case is to structure the summary to firstly include the facts of the case, then to identify the legal issue or issues, and lastly to discuss the decision of the court. Under the heading, the decision of the court, is where you'd include the reasons for the decision of the court. It is most helpful to use this structure as headings under which you divide your summary into. When reading the case, keep in mind that you are to find the information that is the most relevant to place under such headings. So to recap, the case summary should be structured as follows. Firstly, the facts of the case. Secondly, the legal issue or issues, as there could be more than one. And thirdly, the decision of the court. Each heading will now be discussed separately. When summarizing the facts of the case, keep the following tips in mind. The facts in your summary should be concise as possible. Read the entire case first before you try to establish which facts are relevant. The essential facts which should be included in your case summary are the facts that are established by the court and those that are relevant to the legal issue that the court is addressing. The facts that are irrelevant to the legal issue should be excluded, and often the facts that reflect the court's attempt at resolving factual disputes between the parties should also be excluded. When summarizing the legal issue, keep the following in mind. The legal issue is the question of law that the court is asked to resolve and requires the court's decision. The legal issue arises from the facts established by the court that bears a legal consequence. Phrase the legal issue or issues in your summary in no longer than a sentence or two. Here is an example of a legal issue identified in a case summary. The legal issue that arose was whether the bank, through the actions of its teller on the council's premises, actually took possession of the money, thereby completing the deposit made by the council. As you can see, the legal issue identified is concise, and it is the question of law that the court is asked to resolve. When summarizing the decision of the court, keep the following in mind. The decision of the court is to include the reasons for the judgment, which includes an application of the law to the facts, and lastly, the outcome of the case. The summary of the decision of the court is to be brief, but do keep in mind that this is a core part of the case summary, and enough information should be included to have a good overview of the reasons of the decision to understand how the court resolved the legal issue. Before we conclude today's lecture, I want to mention that you could be asked to critically discuss or comment on the decision of the court. Keep in mind that if you are asked to do so, it does not necessarily mean that the court came to a wrong decision. In this instance, you are to meaningfully comment on the relevance of the case in the context of your studies. What is asked is not a personal opinion, but rather a discussion of the opinion of, or where relevant, a contrast of opinion of academic authors or commentary in other case law. The ability to read case law and summarize a case correctly is one of the most essential skills for you as a law student and for your legal career. It is particularly important since case law is one of the main sources of law. You are therefore encouraged to practice the skill. I hope that you have found the lecture to be helpful and informative.